She wheeled into court and said, "He followed my orders." The room froze. The girl they all mocked had outsmarted the Empire's war council. But what happened next will leave you speechless. First, let's go back to the beginning. The banquet hall shimmered with opulence, glass spires catching the refracted starlight, banners of royal dye sweeping across the vaulted ceilings like artificial auroras. But beneath all the splendor, the mood was venom dressed in velvet. The laughter that followed Lord Vexian's announcement wasn't the kind shared among comrades. It was sharpened mockery aimed like a blade. Every noble smile bared teeth. Every toast clinked like the tap of a gavel. This wasn't a celebration. It was a public sentencing disguised as an honor. Captain Travis Cole stood still as stone, jaw locked, knuckles whitened around the goblet he never sipped from. He'd bled for the Empire at Gora, dragged his crew through hell and back to crush a rebellion that the Valari themselves were too precious to touch. His men had died screaming in irradiated trenches, and for that service, for the bodies he stacked in their name, this was the payment. A crippled girl in a rusted hoverchair, served up like carrion in front of a laughing court. Lilia didn't flinch. She didn't plead. Her silence was more terrifying than any scream. There was no collapse, no trembling lip. Only stillness, studied, practiced, perhaps even honed over years of enduring this parade of cruelty. Her golden eyes scanned the hall not in desperation but with clinical detachment, as though cataloging a species she'd long since stopped hoping to understand. They landed on Cole only briefly, and in that instant he saw something that did not belong in a body so worn: contempt and a complete lack of fear. The nobles around him cheered, delighted by what they thought was a joke too perfect to top, a human mongrel bound to alien nobility, a war dog leashed to a shattered prize. They'd made a performance of it, and the final act was a cruel wedding vow, spoken under duress. Cole didn't speak until they were alone in the transport bay. He didn't trust himself to open his mouth in front of them, not with the rage seething just below his skin. When he finally looked at her again, there was no pity in his stare. Pity would have insulted them both. There was only the ache of realization. They hadn't just tried to humiliate him. They'd thrown away her, discarded like scrap, a bargaining chip in a social game played by sociopaths in silks. She expected nothing. And somehow, that was what stung most. It meant she'd already learned the truth he'd only just seen. She was never meant to be more than an object. But somewhere behind those golden eyes, he sensed it. Something dangerous. Something waiting. The patrol ship Iron Revenant was not built for comfort. It was a slab of reinforced steel and welded practicality. A coffin with thrusters, as Cole once described it to a new recruit. Inside, light came in low bands, humming in soft pulses like a watchful machine breath. Silence ruled the corridors, interrupted only by the dull thud of boots and the occasional static chirp of reports. And yet, in the far end of Deck C, tucked behind a bulkhead originally meant for supply overflow, Lilia Vexian turned her exile into a laboratory. Cole never told her what to do. He barely spoke at all in the beginning. But he noticed. He noticed how she wheeled herself to the auxiliary terminal night after night, the chair's mechanics softly whining against the metal plating. He noticed the glow of the holographic interface reflected in her eyes, the way her lips moved soundlessly as she traced ship schematics, line by line, drill by drill. She didn't ask for help. She rewired his interface gloves without permission, retuned them for limited mobility, her one working hand carefully coaxing each sensor node into compliance. He found them one morning by the control chair, repackaged with a spare voice modulator and a note that simply read, "For redundancy." That was the first time he looked at her not as a victim but as an operator. The moment solidified when the Sector 9 incident hit. A minor pirate gang, a ghost blip on long range, dismissed by command. But when they cut power to the rear decks and forced a hardboard attempt through the maintenance hatch, it was her seal code, executed 3 seconds before breach, that saved the lives of 12 crewmen. Later, when he reviewed the log, he saw it wasn't instinct or accident. She had been monitoring cargo signature inconsistencies for days, cross-referencing them against known pirate smuggling patterns from outdated Valari archives. "Why?" he asked her that night. His voice wasn't accusatory, just raw. She didn't even look up from the display. "They never saw me as anything but a failed investment. But you?" She paused. "You gave me a room and left the door unlocked." There was no sentiment in her voice, no plea for praise, just the bare anatomy of a truth she had long since accepted. She didn't owe loyalty. She chose it. After that, the silence between them changed. Cole began to speak, not orders, but ideas, scenarios, battles he'd fought, mistakes he'd made. He expected boredom. Instead, she asked better questions than his lieutenants ever had. He stopped seeing a wheelchair. He started seeing a mind sharp enough to carve through doctrine. And somewhere deep in the steel gut of that ship, respect began to take root. Not the performative kind exchanged in uniformed salutes, but the quiet, armor-piercing kind that men like him didn't give easily. He still didn't touch her, not in pity, not in duty. Now it was reverence. The ambush was surgical. Cole's fleet emerged from warp space in tight escort formation, flanking what was supposed to be a humanitarian convoy. 3 civilian-class haulers tagged with the sigil of the Valari Medical Consortium. No escort beacons, no combat signatures. Just clean signals and a sterile flight path across neutral territory. But to a trained eye, the symmetry was too clean. Lilia had noticed the timing discrepancies during the fleet handoff. The convoy's transponder pings were identical, down to the nanosecond. No variation, no drift. Synthetic, forged. And when Cole received the updated orders from Imperial High Command, delivered through an encrypted channel he didn't recognize, she didn't wait to be asked. By the time Cole settled into the command chair, she was already 2 layers deep into the comnet, bypassing standard protocols through backdoor access points she'd built in secret. Her voice came through his earpiece, sharp and without hesitation. "They're spoofing medical tags. No civilian heat signatures on board. Initiating silent drift protocol. You have less than 2 minutes." He didn't argue. As the first pirate shells screamed through the void and the convoy opened fire with hidden turrets, Iron Revenant broke formation. 2 decoy ships surged forward under Lilia's pre-planned divergence curve, broadcasting false target locks to draw fire. Cole's flagship, engines cold, began its slow pivot into shadow, riding the wake of a solar flare, cloaked by the very chaos meant to consume them. What followed was pure math and murder. The pirates panicked first, their tight formation disrupted by ghosts on their flanks. The Valari destroyers moved to regroup, but the flagship emerged behind them like a steel phantom, plasma lances gutting their engines from the blind side. By the time the smoke cleared, Cole had 3 ships left, scorched, battered, but alive. 7 others were gone. 200 men lost, but 4,000 civilian lives from a nearby outpost saved. Command didn't care. The tribunal convened in the high lattice, beneath the golden dome of Valari justice, a theater of polished glass and political theater. Cole stood before them blood-stained, silent, jaw set as the accusations unfurled. Violation of chain of command, unauthorized battle protocol, reliance on unlicensed civilian interference, treason. He opened his mouth once, just once. "I'll take the punishment." But then the soft hum of servo motors. Lilia rolled forward alone, past the gasps and sneers. "No," she said. Her voice trembled not from fear, but the force it took to stand her ground while sitting. "He followed my orders. I initiated the protocol. I read your manuals. I applied your doctrines. If your shame is that a crippled daughter saved your fleet when your admirals didn't, then punish me." A pause followed, thick as vacuum. The court, always so quick to mock, said nothing. Because they knew. No one laughed this time. They couldn't erase her. The Valari High Council tried, at first. Tried to seal tribunal records, scrub the footage, reframe the outcome as a regrettable misunderstanding. But data cores from 3 surviving ships told the truth with brutal clarity. Black box logs bore her voice. Combat analytics traced her tactics. Survivors, many of them junior officers too low in rank to be bribed or threatened, spoke her name like it was a lifeline. Lilia Vexian, the daughter discarded, the crippled girl who outwitted the best-trained admirals the Empire had to offer. Cole was banished with the political subtlety of a rusted blade. No formal charges, no grand ceremony, just a silent decommissioning, a revoked security clearance, and a one-way ticket out of official space. But he didn't vanish. He drifted outward into the ungoverned fringes, where law was a rumor and borders meant less than fuel range. It was there, in the gravity wells of forgotten moons and the dust-choked orbits of burnt-out stations, that he found them, the misfits, the broken, the unwanted, soldiers with prosthetics held together by rusted bolts, genetic hybrids bred for wars that ended before they could serve, orphans of extinct colonies, outcasts, everyone. And they followed him, not because he promised glory, but because beside him stood her. Commander Lilia Vexian Cole. She didn't bark orders. She spoke them, measured, precise, impossible to ignore. She studied every variable, learned every voice under her command. Her neural rig interfaced with battle nets faster than most officers could blink. But it was her mind, not her machinery, that made her a force of nature. In her first solo campaign, facing a trio of Kresh destroyers along the Sol Drift Line, she deployed a maneuver none had ever seen, a 3-layer holographic decoy, shimmering fields of false sensor data, making her enemies see ghosts where no ships existed. By the time they fired, they were attacking each other. The real strike came 10 seconds later, from below, in a forgotten debris band where she'd hidden her assault ships in a static-wrapped coffin drift. No casualties. 3 enemy flags captured. 1 word spread. Commander. The Valari tried again then, with smiles this time, diplomatic envoys, promises of status, an offer to restore her name to the noble houses. She sent no speech, no recorded message, just 3 words, printed in silver ink on a black transmission card. "You gave me away." From then on, she was not just a legend. She was proof that strength doesn't always roar, that command isn't measured in footsteps, and that no voice is too quiet to shape the stars. The galaxy remembers many great names, but it bends for those who refuse to be erased.